I was born to a very young mother, and the first documented abuse towards me I found in my medical records recently was at 1 year old, and it says on my medical records abuse from mother. My mum and my real dad were very violent towards each other, and obviously me and my brother. My dad moved away, and then my stepdad came on the scene. I remember my stepdad saying to me when I was 5 years old, I don't like you, but we need to get along for your mother. The physical and emotional abuse on me continued from my mother and my stepdad all the way through my childhood until I left home at 15. My mother and my stepdad did have 2 other children, so we did all get abused at some point. I believe maybe because I didn't fight back. I wanted my mum to love me. I can't recall all the incidents of like severe physical abuse. It's very hazy, but I do recall one incident. My stepdad had me up against the throat in the kitchen and my feet weren't on the floor. There was a few times throughout my childhood as well that I was kept off school by my mum because I had like a black eye or like visible injuries. That continued pretty much up until I took my first overdose when I was 15 years old. When I woke up in hospital, my mum told me not to tell them that like what it was for. We did have sort of like social services involved throughout our childhood, but for some reason none of us ever said anything that was going on at home, which is weird. Following my first overdose at 15, I ran away and I spent a week living on the streets of London, and luckily I didn't have any like dangerous, if you like, encounters with anybody. I did meet a homeless man who did sort of like look after me for the week. He actually encouraged me to go home, and the police did find me a couple of times, but I just gave them a different name so that they wouldn't take me home. I eventually went home after about a week, and then I think I moved out pretty soon after that and started living on my own. I was going to school and college and working as a waitress as well. There was a couple of instances where my mum slapped me around the face in front of some of my friends. My mum and my stepdad there was a lot of abuse in the home. I developed an eating disorder, which followed me into adulthood. I recall my first issues with food starting at around 9 years old. I also recall having starting to drink from my mum's cupboard at the age of 14. I used to drink the Bacardi from her cupboard. I can't stand Bacardi now. I would regularly go to sort of like under 18 like parties and events and get thrown out because I was drunk, and which then my mum would have to come and pick me up and slap me in the car park. And so I kind of used food and sort of like a coping mechanism, and this followed me and got more severe. After I'd moved out, I had a volatile relationship with my mum, on and off. I was being very chaotic, making a lot of bad decisions. I think because I was free from the abuse that I was experiencing at home, and I remember thinking at 9 years old, maybe my mum's skinny, so maybe mum will love me if I get skinny. That's the initial thought that triggered my eating disorder. I thought if I look like my mum, maybe she might love me. I married quite young, following a period of homelessness and a lot of abusing. I met my husband when I was living in a homeless hostel. We ended up joining a church, and the church helped get us back on our feet. And then we almost, if you like, became their success story. So we got married very quickly through the church. But there was a lot of drinking and violence in my marriage. The final incident which made me file for divorce and leave my husband was he came back from a barbecue with his friends one night. I was at home in bed. He woke me up by assaulting me, which led to a physical altercation where he headbutted me to the face and broke my nose. So I reported this to the police. It went through court. He pleaded guilty, but he got a suspended sentence and had to register as offender for 5 years. Our marriage was very short-lived. I don't think we even hit the 2-year mark on our marriage. And obviously I told the church what had happened. And I was very surprised. They ended up sending my husband on a healing retreat. He actually cheated on me with another girl that was there from the church. They told me that because I had failed as a wife. So I walked away from the church and again went slightly off the rails into whilst I had my divorce going through, whilst I also reported this to the police, and they took that quite seriously and took it to Crown Court, which is where he pleaded guilty. Shortly after this, my anorexia got even worse, and I actually ended up being admitted into an eating disorder unit for 6 months. I went into renal failure. When I did get out of hospital, I was partaking obviously a lot of that drink with this new friendship group that I had. I forgive my mother. My mother was very ill. Later in her life, she committed suicide in 2017. She had me when she was 15 years old, so she was still a child herself. I do forgive my mum, but I do not forgive my stepdad. Last December, I got a late diagnosis of autism, which makes a hell of a lot of sense for a lot of the weird behaviour I was exhibiting as a child. It was, as we know now, undiagnosed autism. Since I've got sober, later on in my life, my got really bad and resulted in me having to go to rehab. I got sober 2 years, 9 months ago, and since I got sober, I've been having almost sort of like a bit of a reflection journey with myself. I think I'm actually the best version of myself that I ever have been at the moment. Obviously, I've got a lot of emotional damage and trauma, but I'm now in a safe place. I'm engaging with mental health services and therapy to help me heal. And now, at 40 years old, I'm finally in a headspace where I can recognise that and start focusing on the healing journey that I need to make to be able to move forward in my life without using either anorexia or as an escape. If I could meet the old version of me, I'd give her a big hug and just tell her that it does get easier. Eventually she will be believed. But I did have some successes throughout my life. I did manage to run a dance school for a couple of years when I got out of the eating disorder unit. I was still drinking a hell of a lot. Now, if I reflect back, I think a lot of the reason that I actually had the dance school was because it was an easy disguise for me to stay anorexic, because I was so active. I've recognised that as I've got older. I know that at the moment it's not a healthy environment for me to go back to, because it's just gonna trigger that coping mechanism again. When I got out of rehab and I sobered up, I realised that whilst I was drinking myself into blackout episodes and whilst in a relationship with this man, he would actually me. I reported this to the police. I was at his house while he was enabling me to drink when I got to a certain level of drunk where I'm completely have no memory of what's going on. I'm not there. This occasion, he had me, and the next morning I asked him, and obviously he said that he had me. When I eventually managed to get out of his house, I got a written confession from him. I left this man. He had kidnapped me. He locked me in his house and wouldn't let me leave, which I had recorded on my phone the entire thing to give to the police. I did report this to the police. Apparently he died last year, so karma comes around. So I'm allowing this time to really focus on healing that part of me and engaging in services. But I'm optimistic that in the future I'm going to get back on my feet. Speak up. Just don't let them silence you. That's my biggest mistake as a younger adult. Just please speak out. Don't go for it alone.